My name is Mitch Benner, and we started this podcast to remove the stigma around sobriety from addiction.
My name is Aaron Nelson. Through our stories and the stories of our guests, we hope to help you find a new path.
It's not. I don't think that'll reach my guy. That's Zeke's phone. Oh, well, we'll use this outlet over here. I got you. I can make it look. This is the longest fucking cord I've played. Well, thank you guys for coming back. We are here, episode 17 of Shattered Darkness. Today we have a good friend of both Aaron and I. His name is Zeke Cortez. How you doing, brother?
I'm awesome, man.
Thanks for being here today.
Yeah.
So Zeke he owns and started Supernatural Eats here in town, which is a meal packaging,
meal preparation, catering, and
Yep.
government food service.
So kind of
real food.
Yeah, real good food, healthy food. So Supernatural Eats, and then he's also involved in politics here in Loveland and like heavily involved in that. So I'll let you explain a little bit more about that too. But we're just excited that you're here with us today, man.
I'm excited to be here,
man. Honestly, you have a cool journey or a cool story about recovery and just kind of how you got to where you're at today. So we're excited to hear it.
Yeah, that part, I would say if there was like a level of addiction, right, where you're like the rabbit hole is a 10, bottom of the barrel.
Yeah,
I would say I flirted with the line of like a 6 to an 8 for a lot of years.
Yeah,
and I felt like I hit that 10 before I actually got there, and that's kind of what pulled me back.
Okay,
a lot of natural things, a lot of natural factors in there, and that like physically I would go days and days and days on end, and then I'd start to get to the point where I didn't even function.
Yeah,
like I just wouldn't even get up. I just call into work for like a whole week, man.
What was
get fired and then be like,
what was your poison?
Percocet and Oxycontin before Percocet, because Oxy was like,
so
it was the rave.
Yeah,
like it was.
Sorry,
it was an acquired taste.
You sit up a little bit. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, no.
You're good. Now
You hear me better now?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was Oxycontin.
Yeah,
and then Perks, and then got into some other stuff too.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So
I
was going to say, so what we've been doing is kind of like and you can start wherever you want, but chronologically leading into kind of how that started, and then, going through recovery and kind of where you're at today. So,
I would tee this up by saying my childhood kind of made it a perfect segue into drugs and addiction. Mm-hmm. My brother Abe and I weren't raised by like our dad. Yeah. Our dad was in our older siblings' lives, but not our lives.
Okay.
And so when I was 2 years old, my mom and my dad split. And him coming to America is a whole nother story, dude. And there's a lot of reasons why I, for a long time, I was just so mad.
Yeah.
I had held all this anger towards my dad. But him coming over and getting here, his goal was never to be a great dad. His goal was just to get here and have kids so they could have a better life. And here I am with my own business, my own family, and my own life.
So he accomplished his goal. Obviously you guys struggled a little bit through that, but
very much. My mom basically raised 4 kids, single mom. So you can imagine how hard that is. Mm. She was making like $8 an hour when we were 4 or 5 years old.
That's crazy.
And
did he help? He didn't help financially or anything like that? Like he just was
when he left? No.
Yeah.
You know what? When I was like 19 or 20, I was living with my mom and out in Greeley, and she had finally gotten a big check from him.
Okay.
And I remember being like, "Oh, cool!" I just was like, it was weird. I was like, "Oh, so do I get that or do you get that?" Or what?
Right.
And she's like, "No, I'm gonna get it and like pay off my car debt and my credit card debt." And I didn't get it at the time. I was kind of like, "Well, shit." I was like lived kind of like poor growing up, and being like taking all my brother's hand-me-downs, going to school and getting made fun of for my clothes and shit. Kind of felt like I deserved some of that money.
Totally.
Didn't get it.
Didn't get it. Yeah.
So, but that set me up, that childhood, and going through just issues, dude. And it's too hard to go into every single problem. you know, but you can imagine single mother,
Absolutely.
4 kids growing up.
And you're the youngest, right?
I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a lot of like rage, not even anger, dude, rage from just having like my oldest brother and oldest sister who were 7 and 9 years older than my closest brother to me. They'd like whoop our ass when we were little kids. And you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes physics just doesn't let you win that fight.
Totally, dude.
You know what I mean?
I know exactly
it's like
what
you
you
go
mean.
and fight a 400-pound like offensive line.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how good you are. Like the weight is going to make a difference.
You're getting your ass whipped. So that, you know, we went through that. And I'm looking for this, you know, when you fall off your bike, when you're riding around as a kid, dude, who picks you up?
You're supposed to be your dad.
Your dad. You know what I mean? But if your mom's at work all the time and can never help you with those little things as a child, then you start to build up some resentment.
Totally.
So always looking for that father figure. Didn't really have it. My mom married this guy from Mexico and then ended up getting divorced with him just after he got his citizenship.
Oh, okay.
Go figure.
Yeah, I see what's going on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I can see where she got some of her resentment and frustration too, and having to deal with like my brother and I as kids. Like, it's just a bad mix, dude.
Yeah.
Like the father out of the house just fucks everything up.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
So it teed me up for later in life, you know, as wrestling, I kind of held on to that. I didn't really like wrestling, but that was where I got my wins for my whole life. So going to a tournament and taking first, that was like my fulfillment, you know, but I fucking hated wrestling. I hated waking up early and just the mentality, everybody screaming and whatnot. And still then, most of the time you go wrestle and who's there to support you?
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be your dad. Yeah.
Your dad, your mom.
Yeah.
And they're not there. So, but still.
And that's a pretty intense environment too. Like we just put our son in that.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't imagine him doing that on his own.
You walk into the gym and wrestling. This is why I love wrestling, dude. Now, and I have such an appreciation for it, even though I hated it at the time, is you walk into a gym and you just hear screaming.
Yeah, exactly, dude. It's crazy.
And people get intense into it. And that is such a good indicator when you're one-on-one with somebody else. You have nobody else. There's nobody to blame.
Right.
You can't look around and be like, oh, it was his fault. He didn't make that block. It was this person's fault. They didn't get that rebound. You know, it's like what time did you put in to win that match? You know, and sometimes it just comes down to heart, but wrestling's such a good teacher of all of those.
Is there any sport that teaches accountability like that?
Dude, not that I've come across. I mean,
personal.
MMA,
I was gonna say,
something
jujitsu
like
and stuff like that, but that's got to be like golf, maybe. You know, it's those things that are like those individual. Like you are, I totally understand what you mean. Like you are the only one that you can look at in that situation and be like, okay, what did I do well? What did I not do well?
But you know, in golf is even more. It's like a real big mental game, right?
Totally.
Wrestling is, you know, you can be a great wrestler and you can lose to somebody that's not great, that has way better conditioning and heart.
That's what I think I like the most about it is the heart, right?
Oh,
like the grit,
all heart, bro.
Yeah, and that's what like I look at that too, right? Real estate, sales, things like that. Very, very similar mindset, you know. So that's why we put our son in it because of that, you know.
Yeah.
Plus, he can go kick the shit out of his friends
and for the rest of your life, he'll always have an edge.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And there's a lot of people now that, you know, through high school and through his early years when he's getting out into the world and going to bars and whatnot,
right?
You can let him go and feel good.
Yeah,
he's protected.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly,
because he has
dude.
that skill.
Yeah, and that's what both my kids, like I really want my daughter to start in some kind of like, you know, Krav Maga or karate or whatever, you know.
Well, there's wrestling for girls.
Well,
too.
dude, some of the girls in his class are freaking little G's, dude. They're good.
Yeah.
You know, they kick the shit out of
high school.
all
Like if you lost to a girl, it was like, what are you doing?
Bro,
but now, like,
I think
some
that
of these girls are so freaking good that it is no shame.
Well, did you
anymore.
see that Cole Leesenhope's daughter?
Troy.
Or Troy. Was it his daughter?
Yeah,
that
Sadie.
just won state?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she is.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, dude.
She's
I
a
haven't seen
killer.
Troy in a while. Good
She's
for
a
him.
killer.
Good for her. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is she Bear Cave?
No, she's at LHS.
Oh,
Loveland.
Loveland.
Well, did she go to Bear Cave or was it Victory? Because he does Victory, right?
No, I think he did his. I think he did his own club.
Oh,
I remember him being really good in high school.
But she didn't go to Victory, I don't think. I think he was at Victory for a while, unless maybe I wasn't there for the class because Silas is younger than her. So when he was in wrestling, he was probably not in the same.
No.
She's state champ. That's all that matters.
So how old were you when you were doing these tournaments by yourself, going to this stuff? Like middle school, high school?
Both. I started wrestling when I was 6, and I got so frustrated with wrestling to the point where I actually quit a year.
Yeah.
But my mom still, like, she wanted to get rid of me at night, so no matter what, I'd still have to go to the practices.
Yeah.
So, dude, I'd be like sitting there, and all my buddies for like years and the teammates that I had for years would just be like running around like, what the fuck are you doing?
You're just sitting
They're
there.
like, yeah, what are you doing? And at that time, you don't have a device, so you're just watching them. You look like a
Idiot.
yeah.
So you're like,
so I
all
eventually
right.
just got back into it.
Yeah.
I think at like maybe 3/4 of the way through the season, like right before regionals, I
Yeah.
ended up getting back into it.
You're like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
And
So-
you said do you still do mixed martial arts today?
No.
I heard you mention jujitsu.
No, I did like 1 year of training in MMA.
Dude, I did one class and puked, and then I was like, fuck that.
Dude,
I want to do it though. I totally bitched out.
the first month that I went to do some training, Noah Thomas, who went on the UFC, the Ultimate Fighter,
Yeah.
I was like the only dude in the whole MMA that could wrestle, and we were about the same size. So what do you think happened?
Kicked his ass.
No, the Katie was her name, was like, oh yeah, you're gonna like spar with Noah, and he couldn't kick me. She didn't let him kick me, but we were like punching and whatnot. And then after a while, she's like, hey, you need to like wrestle with him and take him down and stuff. So because he's getting ready for a fight.
Yeah.
So pretty soon I'm like getting punched, grab him, wrestle, you know what I mean? And that was the whole reason that she had me sparring, because there was nobody his size
Gotcha.
that could wrestle, and he was about ready to fight a wrestler. So, dude, I would walk out of there with like a fucking headache every single time I went in, just get my ass kicked, every time. And then eventually I had a buddy of mine that was just like, dude, why are you training MMA? Like, what are you going to do with that?
Blasted all the time.
I was like, I don't know. I go there every, 2 times a week, and I just get my ass whooped. Like, so it's pretty cool. And he's like, there's just no future for you in that.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like just deflated my balloon. And
Yeah,
then
but
I stopped.
Self-defense, like, you never know.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, to keep your skills sharp, it's like shooting. You don't want to have to ever use it, but
yeah.
warrior in a garden.
In this case, I just listened to him, and I was just like, oh yeah, you're right.
This sucks. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
So, I guess to take it back, you kind of, that's just a bit of childhood.
Yeah. So it was difficult, dude. You were by yourself a lot. It sounds like you in
to an extent. I mean, my mom came. It's not like I don't want to paint the picture either that I had like the worst childhood, because I think a lot of people do that. They're like, oh, I just had this traumatic childhood, and it's like we're all adults now,
right?
And we got to participate in the world. You can't just like hold that over your head forever as like this beacon of fucking justice and
victimhood.
Yeah, and just like a gold medal of like the worst childhood,
right.
And I know people have had it way worse than me too, totally. So I don't want to like tout that too much. But so that getting into Thompson Valley, I mean, freshman year, I started drinking a little bit in 8th grade. Is when I started drinking, but it wasn't a lot. Like every now and again we'd go drink. And this one time we went and hung out with a bunch of friends, and I had met this girl, and she just like introduced me to manhood, kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
And it was probably not a good idea, but I got started in that really early, dude. And like sexual behavior just jumped up in 8th grade, where I'm like skipping class, and then I'd go home to my house and like make sure I answer the phone. So when the attendant's, automated robotic call called, I would answer it, and then just like, ooh, click 1, you know what I mean? Hang up or whatever. I don't know. And then, so fast forward into 9th grade, then I was starting to drink a little bit, smoked a little bit of weed, nothing too wild, and went through my freshman year. And dude, I I was kind of like having the time of my life.
Yeah.
You know, it was like everything was good. At the time too, I think my mom she was making a little bit more money. So every now and again, you know, Friday night, she'd give my brother and I $10-15 and we'd go spend it on whatever, whether we go into the movies. I was always going to the movies though. And I just take that and we go buy some, you know, alcohol.
Yeah.
That Apple McCormick's handle that was like
so
$12.99, dude. Just made sure I asked for $15 to get that bad boy every time.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. That was the drink of choice at the time. But then fast forward. So going into my sophomore year, I was, you know, I got wiped up in wrestling. I think I don't even know if I won double-digit matches. I just got my ass kicked. But I was still trying. I still had a lot of heart. So going into my sophomore year, we went to this camp in Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up going undefeated through the camp. And I ended up having to wrestle this kid that had placed in state the year before. And he was just like this short, jacked kid
Stocky little
from
dude,
like Pomona or something, some like inner city school in Denver, just a complete badass. And he ended up being my weight, even though I'm like a foot taller than him. Right. And I had to wrestle this kid. Well, I ended up beating him in like an upset. And then we wrestled again. And then I ended up beating him again.
Wow.
And this is going into my sophomore year. And then I started like that boosted my confidence through the roof, dude. I felt like I was the baddest man on the planet. I ended up getting like the VIP or MVP of the entire camp.
Wow.
For doing that. So I won that award going into my sophomore year. Still wasn't into anything crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And one day I come home from school or I'd come home from class and I think we were on maybe like a lunch break. And I walk in and it's my best friend and it's my brother. And I walk into our little duplex and there's the closet on the right side. And then right behind that closet is the dining room and the table. And I look over at them and they both look at me and they're like staring at me. I'm like, fuck are you guys doing?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I
Like,
mean?
hey, what's going on in here?
And my brother's like, hey, come here, man. And I walk up to him and I noticed that they had some lines laid out on the table. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And they started talking. They're like, dude, it's Percocet. And I'm like, what's Percocet?
Yeah.
And they started telling me about it. And it's my best friend and my brother. And my brother and I were pretty close up to that point. And my best friend and I were like best of buds, you know? So they were telling me, yeah, it's just like makes you feel like superhuman, you know? And I don't know who had gotten it. It might have been my brother that had got it, but that is when the whole opioid crisis was starting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't ask any other questions other than like, hey, if I do this, am I going to like puke or what the fuck's going to happen? I'm like, oh, you're just going to feel like really good, dude. Only do a little bit. And I was like, do what? Like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we're going to give you this and you snort it. And then I think my brother did one and then my buddy did one. And then I ended up doing one. And dude, that's like
Game
15
over.
years of that. Right. So I went back to class. I felt great, you know, and then little things that happened where for the immediate future, like in, you know, as a sophomore for the first, like that football season, I was able to start because one of my friends had gotten hurt. So I started in varsity football and then I ended up doing okay starting in wrestling. And then after a while, I started kind of losing some motivation, losing a little bit of heart, giving up. And I never knew what it was from.
And all the while you're still doing
drugs. Yeah, it got to the point where we would, I mean, within a few months after that, I used to carry this little piece of masking tape or not masking tape. What was it? It's like it's not electrical tape. It's like the trainer's tape.
Okay.
You know, and we would make these little squares and two sides of the little square were open. And so we would put our little pill in there, we'd close it and then bite on it. And then we'd take a $1 bill and just snort directly out of that. So I was doing that all through class.
Jeez, dude.
Every single time we would get pills. And at the time you get like a 10 milligram Percocet, dude. And it was like $2
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I remember that shit being so cheap, dude. Like Unfortunately, my mom got wrapped up in that stuff, like had a surgery at the time. And that's what they prescribed her this, it was like 40 milligrams pills that she would take like 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it was crazy, man.
Yeah. Well, we never pop them. It was always
snorting them.
Oh yeah. You take it straight to the brain.
Yep.
And then it got to a point where we started getting, really, really small, where it was just pure Percocet and they weren't cut with like Tylenol or anything like that.
Yeah.
So then we would, a little 5, a little 10 milligram here and there. And by the end of my sophomore year, I remember one of my buddies coming to a party and he's like, dude, I'm like so fucked up right now. I'm like, are you all pilled out? And he's like, yeah, I've blown like 15 Percocets today. And I was like, what?
Holy shit.
And at the time I was still only doing like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And for him, he was like, but I feel fucking good, man. Like I'm just like on cloud 9. And I was like, shit, I don't want to be on cloud 9. Like, let's go do some more. Well, it ended up getting to a point where one of my sister had a husband at the time where I was able to get fronted an ounce of weed. So I ended up being able to
try to sell it,
weed, make a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that was kind of supporting my habit.
Right.
And not like I didn't know that it was getting a little bit out of hand and it was a little bit too crazy. But dude, we were always just in class, outside of class, in sports. Before I go to wrestling, we would just be like 60, 70 milligrams deep.
Jesus, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, dude, just wild. And working your ass off too, like super sweaty. You know what I mean? You'd leave wrestling and just puke. You wouldn't want to eat anything for the rest of the day because it was like so hard.
Yeah.
But when you're that young, you just don't know. You just like, dang, it's like how I feel today. You don't realize that it's because you've been putting hundreds of milligrams of Percocet through your through your bloodstream, and that's why you don't feel good. And then you have other little symptoms too, like getting really constipated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was super sexually active when I was that age too. I always like had a girlfriend, and she also wanted to be sexually active. So it's not just me,
right.
Like the girls at that time were very much, that way.
Yeah.
So then you have, other symptoms where you just aren't, you don't operate the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Gosh, that's crazy, dude. I had no idea that like, because I knew you guys in high school a little bit, but I didn't, and I knew afterwards that you guys were a wild party group, but I had no idea that it was that early.
Oh, dude, that's just the Percocet too. So we'd do perks and then smoke weed, and then when we started getting really into it, like senior year and just out of senior year, we'd be drinking a handle of vodka. Between like 6, 7, 8 of us a night. And then on top of that, doing Percocet and smoking weed. Like we were loaded, dude. And when you're so young, you don't realize how big of an impact that has on you until like 3 or 4 or 5 years later.
Right.
You just wake up and you're like, I got kind of like a little headache today. You know what I mean? Pop Percocet, whatever.
Move on. Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of the symptoms are hidden in the drug as well.
Right.
So you never really like feel 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days later where your head's like clear,
Yeah.
So that was kind of the entrance into 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. So getting through high school and going through those times, I would still say I had overall like a good high school career. Like I graduated, you know what I mean? But I was just a fucking idiot, dude. I think in my high school quote, I have nose candy is dandy. In my high school, like in the yearbook, you can go back and read that.
That's hilarious.
And this girl comes up to me. Her name is Michelle. She's precious little. She was like 5'0" dude. She'd be like, oh, what do you want in your quote? And I told her, and she's like, are you sure? Thinking, and I was just like, well, fuck yeah.
Yeah, why
Put
not?
that shit in there. Like, this is who I am right now. You know what I mean?
That is so funny.
And looking back on it, it was so stupid.
Dude, mine's so spiritual and deep. Like, I'm like, fuck, man. Like, that's good. That's super insightful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, a buddy of mine, his printed was take 2 and pass it to the left.
Damn.
Yep.
Hey, man.
Yeah, we would all been best friends in high school. Well, maybe not you, but you and me. For
I was
sure.
actually pretty good in high school. Like, that's the thing. Like, my craziness didn't start till after high school.
Yeah.
Like, I was a pretty good kid in high school.
Like, I would have been best friends with you, but I should have been best friends with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, I mean, we had a good time there.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
I think I was a little bit, too charged. Like, you get on pills and whatnot, and you have some massive mood swings. So don't get me wrong, like, it was fun, but there was like fights.
Yeah.
Like,
And I actually remember that, dude. I remember going camping at Storm Mountain, and it just got out of control.
Yeah.
And there was so many fights that happened that night, and it was just like, I'm like, dude, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
So that's crazy, man. We were just, we just smoked weed and drank, and there were never any fights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember ever
crazy.
like fighting like you guys did,
Dude, we go up to Storm Mountain, bro, and everybody that would camp after us would know that we were there. We would just be like 2 a.m. in the morning. Everybody's hammered, plastered, drunk, and you just go tree tipping. You just go push over trees.
I remember that.
Quarter mile away from the campsite, half mile. You're walking in the dark. You know what I mean? Like, there's a fire going. There'd be people that like throw bottles in the fire, and nobody knew that when you have a bottle that's like closed and you throw it in the fire,
That's gonna
it
explode.
explodes.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, we'd be sitting there, and some idiot would be like, "Oh, throw the bottle in the fire," not thinking anything of it. All of a sudden, it explodes.
Ooh, yeah.
And there's this girl that's like, "Ah!" And you look over, and her whole head is like cut up from the shrapnel from the glass.
And then that guy's over there laughing.
Dude, I remember one time when we were.
It's chaos,
Yeah.
man. You have a bunch of kids there that are like, there's testosterone's taking over, and then you have young girls that are like, you're trying to impress the girls, and so there's fights, and just
dude,
shit.
and then you throw in hundreds of milligrams of fucking Oxycontin and all that stuff, and yeah, dude. One of those trips, actually, this is a funny story. So my cousin and I came up. I picked him up at his house in Windsor. We got back the next morning, and he had left a candle burning, almost lit his kitchen on fire, his dad's kitchen on fire. His whole house, dude, was like smoke damage. The fire department was there. And we were like, well, we're going to go to Vermont. See you guys later.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's too much, man. It's too much.
That was wild.
That you forget things. You make so many little mistakes. You damage so many little relationships. Going into, I would say, right after high school, 19 years old, one of my buddies got an apartment. And then just everything that happened in high school was like so much more centralized and focused. And there wasn't all this other shit that we had to do for high school. It was just like work. Then we go to my buddy's house. Yeah. So when I was 19 years old, well, yeah, it would have been, I think, 19. He's living in this apartment just right off First Street, kind of a ghetto area. But we didn't care. We show up. And, dude, first time being there, I think we did the whole thing, right? You're doing Percocet, doing Oxys, you're smoking your weed. Within a few weeks, it was like the claim to fame to be able to snort an 80 milligram Oxycontin in just one line.
That's unbelievable, dude.
And at the time, what was so bad, like it was the perfect storm, because we're working, we're able to show up for work and make money and take home, $500 a week or whatever it was, $400 a week at the time. I was working construction at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing in $400 a week. I'm getting paid $10 an hour, working 40 hours a week. Going there, and then 80 milligram Oxycontin was like $5 at the time.
Oh my God, dude, that's crazy.
So you buy 10 and you're set for like the whole week, and then pretty soon you're buying 20. And then pretty soon we would have where we would go and like buy out somebody's entire prescription of like 90. So we would all go in and be like, hey, we can get all 90 of these, and they'll go back to like $7.50 is what she'll do for it, So we would all go try to find people that had a prescription that we could connect with and just buy out their prescription. And dude, it like, in a way it's fucked up, because a lot of people that were getting this stuff had problems, like cancer.
Well, and dude, you got to think too, like this is the opioid crisis, right? Yeah. So those prescriptions, bro, you could go like those people you're getting that, they could fill that in one day and go back and fill it the next week.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that bad.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And I remember because I remember doing Oxy a few times, and we went up to Horsetooth. And dude, my buddy fell out of a tree and like literally had a fucking branch like sticking out of his elbow, dude. Like we had to pull it out of his arm like an inch and a half.
Yeah.
And I just remember puking the whole time. And it was just like, it was euphoric, it was fun, but like I threw up so much that I was like, all right, I'm good on that. And I think I did maybe like 10 milligrams.
Yeah.
So I know that feeling, that euphoric feeling, but fuck, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Cause did you watch that movie about it's got Matthew Broderick in it and
that's a good one.
Taylor Kitsch, and he ends up ODing on opiates in his truck at the end. But he like in the beginning, he like falls off something and breaks his back. And it's just a show about how fucked up that all was from the top level,
Like the Purdue Pharma one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I did watch that actually.
It's good, but it's kind of hard to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a really good just illustration and timeline of how it works, dude.
Yeah.
Of how it truly is. When he was like looking through it for his pills through his house, you would do the same thing.
That's the same thing.
And even when I was like 18, 19 years old, living at my mom's house, and I'm like tearing my room apart, she would hear me in the other room and be like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just fucking looking for something. Like, get away from me."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She'd be like, "Whoa, what's your problem?" And you won't think anything of it.
Right.
But you just like blew up on your mom for asking you why you're ripping your room, but you think she's the bad one,
right?
Because she came into your room asking you a question. Like, why the fuck are you asking me questions? It's just like, But that's what your parents do. They ask you why are you tearing your room apart? It's weird.
You think she knew what was going on?
Yeah, dude, she had to an extent. Like my brother and I both hid it really well, like as much as we could. But dude, like fights, we were in trouble.
I remember that, dude. I remember your brother being like, if you saw that dude in Old Town, I'm like, and I'm going to go to this bar over here.
Yeah.
He was a wild man.
Yeah. It was just nuts, man. And it was all the time too. Yeah. It wasn't like one fight here and then like 6 months later, it was all the time. There was always something like that happening, when I was still in high school, this crazy story, dude, where I was just jacked up, real jacked up. And, I left one of my buddy's house to go home. And for whatever reason, I went and stopped by the ATM, and I had like 70 30 milligram Percocets on me at the time. Right. And I'm driving around the Safeway, the one right off 34 in Wilson right there. Yep. And you know how they have that kind of like that wraparound driveway that goes from east to west, and then you can go up north on the east side of Safeway, right next to where the road is, where 7-Eleven is right there behind it.
Yep. So
I was driving around that corner and didn't even think of it, dude. I was just like, I'm going to just fucking hop this curb, and because I don't know where I'm going, I didn't know that there was an outlet, and I just hopped the curb. I turned right, and I'm driving through the grass, just about ready to hit the sidewalk. And I look in front of me, and there's 2 cop cars at 7-Eleven that are parked kind of like perpendicular to how I'm driving.
Yeah.
And they're both sitting on one of the cop cars looking at each other like this. I hop that curb, and they both look over at the same time like this.
Like, did that motherfucker really
and
just
they
do
just
that?
stare at me. And I'm just like, dude, the whole world changed, bro. The whole world changed. I was like, oh. Shit. And this time, by the way, I'm on probation. I'm on probation for a distribution ticket.
Oh, no. For weed or for pills?
Weed.
Okay.
That was kind of bullshit, the way that it happened. But I was on probation. So I hopped this curb, dude. And they're like, well, I guess we better get in our car. Yeah. They get in their car. By the time both of my all my tires land off the pavement, I turn right and I go straight towards 34. And they're both in their cop cars at that time, like backing up, getting ready. And I just booked it across 34, dude. Almost got hit by a semi, by the way.
Oh, ran the light?
Well, it's just a stop sign right there.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because it's right. You're thinking about the street in between the Safeway and 7-Eleven right there.
Yep.
And I'm going southbound on that street, come up to the stop sign, and I just book it. And there was like, at the time, I don't know what the development looks like now right there, but at the time there was just a house and there was like kind of a little driveway that went up to the house. I went and drove straight up to the driveway, parked the car, and then I just booked it, dude. Booked it. And I ran around for like the whole night, bro.
It's like 5 hours.
3-4 hours, dude. I was just running. There's cop cars all over the place. They were like looking for me everywhere. So every time I turned around, I would see a cop car and I would just like duck, run into, like, at the end of the time, I'd look down, and this is like maybe an hour and a half into running. I'd look down and my hands were just covered with blood. My elbows were covered with blood. My knees were covered with blood from landing on the ground so many times, hopping a fence, getting scraped on my arms. It was just ridiculous, dude.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I ended up somehow getting out of that, which might have been a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting out of that. And
So they never found you?
they never found me. But I left my wallet behind, and they ran the plates, and then they contacted my mom right away. And then they never found me that night. I ended up going and getting in touch with my girlfriend at the time. And then she gave me a ride back to my house. And I was like, made up a story, dude. I lied my fucking ass off about what had happened. Because I was on probation, dude. I was scared. I didn't want to go to jail. You know, I had actually, at that time, I think I had been in juvie already by that time. You know, and I had a couple MICs at that time too.
Wow.
Just from partying.
Yeah.
So, so that's kind of like into the next stage right after that. It was just a double down on partying every time.
Yeah.
And I ended up slowing down a little bit after I had my first kid, Silas.
How old is he now?
Well, he's 14 now.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. So even back then, and don't get me wrong, man, like every girl that I was with, like even to his mom, like we were just both immersed in it.
Yeah.
You know, we were responsible in that we would go to work and figure shit out. But, you know, I'd be at work selling cars, dude, and we'd go get a demo and we'd go blow lines in the car.
Yeah.
You know, and just, you know how the car business is.
I'm about to.
Yeah. You know, you got to steer clear because there's people in there that, you know, just be wary of the 45, 50-year-old car salesman that's been in it for 25 years, dude.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about too.
Yeah. And people that just know. And, you know, some of the older guys that I'd be hanging out with, they just knew, you know. So I got a job there from one of my buddies that was also kind of into it, but his big thing was alcohol. You know, he'd do lines and whatnot when they were available, but that wasn't
he wasn't looking for it.
Yeah, that wasn't his fix. His fix was alcohol. So yeah, that's just
crazy, man.
And then it just kind of got and you can take it however you want, man. But I've lied, cheated, I stole. I've done everything about that, like, would make me morally bankrupt.
Yeah.
Under the influence doing that. You know, I was
and
never.
And that's the crazy thing, dude, is all of those things that you did, that's not you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I know who you are as a person, but I also remember, dude, at that time, like, you guys had a reputation, you know, you and your brother, and of getting in fights and, you know, those kinds of things, and just being wild, you know, and it's like, we were all wild, but I think there was a few of us that just went to another level.
Yeah.
So,
this brings up such a good point, dude. Not to cut you off there, but you know, you see all the mug shots and all the stuff like Greeley PD and all the stuff they put on Facebook, and you see those mug shots, and I can't help but always think, like, I wonder if that's like how much of it, like, what are you on? What drugs are you on? Because it's always like, you know, theft or hit and run or something like that. You know, I mean, I just saw one this morning that was murders. I think that's a little bit different, but at the same time, like, I think generally people are good.
I think so too, man. I think inherently we're good. And I think that we just, like, somewhere along, like, the fact that you didn't have a father growing up, like, that is a big deal, right? Like, you don't learn how to deal with the negative emotions. You don't learn how to just respond to things that happen to you in the right way. you know. And then I really feel like our area of Loveland, like where we are in northern Colorado, like it was just a perfect storm for our generation, man. Like social media came out right at that time in 2008. You know, so all of a sudden now it's like this comparison game starts, you know, and then on top of it, the grunge rock culture is so anti like government and this and fuck the system and you can't tell me what to do, you know. So it's just like I just think we had that mentality. And then, you know, right around the time that we went to high school, meth was a huge problem here. Huge problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember at one point, right when we started high school, they doubled the police force because there's just such a huge problem with it. So I think, I think that we were kind of set up for failure there. You know, like you said, it was just a perfect storm.
Yeah.
So
you're predisposed to a lot. And, you know, for me and just my beliefs in how damaged not only the country is, but any local society is, you got to have a father in the house.
Right.
And if looking back on it now, if I had a dad that was just like, I'm going to whoop your ass if you do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or at least the fear of it.
Oh yeah. Well, but even that, sometimes like you just have to like get aggressive with your son, because men are not like your boys do not have the same life as your girls.
Right.
Right.
100%.
Your boys, they have to learn through pain. They have to learn through stress, failure. And those are all good things. Like, and all that stuff, it's not my concepts either.
Right.
A lot of those concepts are in the Bible. It's already taught.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And it's translated into society, and people take that away by saying, hey, well, if you break up or if you get divorced, well, we have all this stuff for you that can make sure that you're going to be okay. So you don't really need a dad in the house. You know what I mean? And then you get into the rabbit hole of the welfare state, but not that that's necessarily a bad thing. But it's definitely not a good thing to have, a bunch of fathers out of the home.
You know, and it's funny you bring that up, because I tell my wife that all the time. You know, she's like, you really want your kids to be afraid of you? And I'm like, yeah, a little bit. You know, and I was like, it's the same thing as like, have you ever heard fear of the Lord? The term of fear of the Lord?
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing. Like if we do things that we know are wrong, there are physical, eternal, and spiritual consequences for that. You know, and it's just like, that's what I'm trying to teach my kids. So yes, like there are things in my spirituality and my belief system that I'm like, oh, if I do that, like there are going to be major consequences for it on the spirit. And dude, that's all I'm trying to teach my kid. And I'm afraid of that, right? Like that's the way it should be. You know, you should be cautious and afraid and like, oh, if I do this, you know, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like, that's all I'm trying to teach my son. And it's like, I don't treat my daughter that way, right? Like I think for them too, it's about their heart. Yeah. Like women have to know that they're protected. They have to know that their heart is secure. Yeah. You know, and so that's what I want my daughter to know, that her heart is safe with me. You know, and then my son, the same thing. Like I've spanked my son 1,000 times more than I have my daughter. Yeah. You know, and it's just like, but she doesn't need it. Yeah. You know, and he does. He needs that direction in his life. So, and I can see too, it's like, I tell my wife, I'm like, watch, I'll discipline him in 30 minutes. He'll be my best friend. Yeah. You know, and sure shit. Yeah. Because she's afraid that I'm damaging that relationship. And I'm like, look, I'm not damaging it. Yeah. I'm strengthening it. Yeah. You know, and this is how it has to be between men.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and a lot of the times too, like if you spank your kids, they will come up to you later, 20, 30 minutes later, and they'll tell you sorry. Yeah. They're like, sorry, I acted this way.
Exactly.
Because after the first initial thought is like, oh my gosh, I'm so angry. That hurts so bad. I'm so mad. But what then they start to realize, and their brain starts thinking, because they can't do anything for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. They're just like focused on
that's physiology.
Yeah.
That's just human physiology, you know? And that's what I'm trying to get my wife to understand. Like his brain is producing a chemical right now that will not allow him to think logically. Yeah. You know? And so it's like, let's let him do that. Give him some space. And in 20 minutes, he'll be the sweetest kid ever.
Yeah. And you know, and then society will clean up the rest of that, because people will say, oh, you spank your kids. I can't believe you. Yeah. You know what I mean? But every single situation you know, and Silas is being exposed to this. Lucy has not been exposed to this, but Silas is being exposed to this where, you know, he starts to hear the chirping at school. Hey, yeah, this kid, you know, really abused by his parents, and he missed a couple days of school last week because he had like bruises on him. But then, you know, so and so called. You know, they're just the stories like that all over that they see, or they say, oh, well, this guy, you know, this girl doesn't have a dad and her mom's never at home, so we can always go over to her house. I'm like, you're not fucking going over there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of the times he starts to realize at his age, it's like, well, maybe it is good that you're like here, you know, even though I can't just get away with whatever the fuck I want to get away with. Like, you're also there because you add a layer of protection, a layer of discipline, a layer of help. You know what I mean? Like, he's never just going to be thrown out. Like,
Right.
I'm always there.
To the wall. Yeah. He's going to, he knows that he's going to be protected. And, you know, that's huge, man. I totally agree with
There's
you.
just two sides of it, you know? But for a long time, I've always thought that, oh, well, yeah, he's just going to resent me if I spank him, or if I do this with her, if I force him to do this. But at first, it's always like this friction, you know, and then they start to resent you, and then they start to respect you.
Yep. And that's exactly the path that I had with my dad. You know, it probably took a little bit longer for me to kind of mentally dissect myself from the path that he wanted for me. And I was fucking crazy, you know, but I literally just told my dad the other day, I was like, dude, I can see how raising me as a teenager would have been extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
You know, because I see it in my son now. He's so stubborn, dude. Like, he doesn't listen to anything that I ask him to do or tell him to do. Yeah. You know, and I'm trying to get him to understand, like, dude, I'm not asking you to do these things because it's, you know, I just want to tell you what to do all the time. Like, there's a reason, you know, like, this is to keep you safe, or this is to keep your sister safe, or this is to keep you guys away from getting in a fight or whatever, you know? So it's like, I'm trying to get him to understand, like, there's intentionality behind all of this, but he's also 4, you know? So I don't know, man, but I like your perspective on that, because that's very much my perspective, you know, and I try to be as involved as I can as a dad and not get afraid of going into those situations and being like, all right, you know what? Like, now I'm your father. Yeah. Not your friend. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. And there's a clear distinction between the two. You know, my wife is more like friends with my daughters. Totally. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Compassionate. And, which is good. They need that, you know? And I never try to tell my wife, like, hey, don't do that. You know, but like, I took a thing away from my son and I was like, if he throws that, put it on Facebook. Like, sell it. You know, I told him that's what's going to happen. So if he misuses that thing, so I'll tell her little things like that. But for the most part, dude, she's a wonderful mom. Yeah. And they need that compassion, right? They need the love. Yeah. So, and I give that to them, but they also, you know, they know that dad's not afraid to bring the iron fist.
Very much. Very much. And kids, especially, they just need that baseline of structure.
Exactly.
And discipline and schedule. Because eventually they're going to stray off the path. Yeah. And that's just natural. And I would rather have them do it sooner rather than later, right? So they don't, like, when they're 45 years old and they decide to just be an alcoholic. It's like, get all that shit out first. Yeah. And then whenever you're ready, you know, hey, this is the type of breakfast we used to have. This is the schedule that you used to be on. We'd wake up at this time. You'd eat a good breakfast. You know what I mean? You drink plenty of water.
Absolutely.
Then you go to school. You know what I mean? Which is going to translate to work. And then at school, we have a nice lunch prepared for you that's healthy, right? You can do all the same shit that we're teaching you here in this house out into the real world, and you have that baseline. All you need to do is revert back to the childhood. You know what I mean? The structure that we built inside you. And that's what I want to leave my kids with, because at a certain point, dude, like my son, he's 14 years old. I can't like spank him. Yeah. I have to like choke slam him. You know what I mean? He's too big to be spanked.
Yeah. And
he's not. And you just want to direct him. Like he's a train now, you know, and you don't, like, you can't push the train off the tracks. Like, you just have to direct him a little bit.
I like that, man. That's a really good analogy. I think a lot about that. You know, I've got 10 years till I'm at that point, but I do think a lot about it. So I really like that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where in your story, Silas was born, how old were you when he was born?
23.
And so things started to slow down for you a little bit there, but didn't really quit. So kind of keep going a little bit on your story.
Yeah, they didn't really quit. They definitely slowed down, but between, his mom and I think we quit for a little bit because the first like 6 months, you just can't do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when he got kind of age, we, I had gotten into some shit when I was younger, and I was still wild up to when he was like born, dude.
Yeah.
So then after he was born, slightly slowed down, but then we started taking trips back to Loveland. We had moved up to Denver off of like Chambers and 40th. So way like east
Yeah,
Denver.
I was going to say Aurora area.
Yeah. Or like north Aurora. We take trips back, and then before you know it, dude, we just hop right back into it. Yeah.
Did you guys move to Denver to try to get away from it?
Yeah. And then what you realize there is that, it's just her and I, and we didn't have a lot of help in terms of people watching.
Yeah.
So we couldn't go and produce as much. So then when you can't produce as much, you have this natural strain of finances then.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of lingering. We didn't care too much at the time, but it was still a stress, So then we take trips back to Loveland, and I get back into it. I actually watched a video the other day, dude, where I was still super young, maybe 24, 25 years old. And we were just plastered on like a Sunday in the middle of the day. And me and like 7 other of my buddies just ran through a fence. My buddy rented this house. There's a fence in the middle of the backyard that just separated it. It just like had a section of fence in the middle. And one day we were just like, what the fuck is that fence doing there? And we were all looking around like, I don't know. Like, shouldn't be there, right? I'm like, yeah, it shouldn't be there. You should take it out. And we literally just like blasted through this fence, dude. So random.
I was going to ask you, how do you feel now when you watch those videos?
Oh, just like an idiot.
Yeah.
Just so dumb.
I know, dude. I was looking back on old Facebook photos, and it's just like, oh my God, like what the fuck?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So from that point, man, then it got into, then I entered a kind of a different stage where his mom and I had separated. It wasn't really what I wanted in the relationship. And looking back on it, it was just, fights all the time, you know what I mean? And just frustrated with each other all the time. I wanted to start kind of working out and getting into the more health and fitness and stuff like that when I could.
Yeah.
So it would be like, go to work, and then at night go work out. And that was always like
an issue.
Dude, it was a big issue. And I don't think that she was in her right mind either. So the interactions and the nagging is what I thought it was probably a little bit outside of what she would have done if she was sober too. So we grew apart, went our different directions. And then that's when I started kind of into like the dating pool, right? Single dad, dating, one kid, and then I had I tore my pec.
Okay.
On my left shoulder here. I tore my humerus, or my pec, completely off my humerus, dude.
How much weight was it?
Ouch. So I had gone commercial fishing, and I had dislocated my shoulder and had surgery on it and whatnot in high school, and so that was another thing that I used. Like,
I was going to say, there you go.
Jacked up. Yeah. But I tore my pec, and I think I was doing 275. But it was stupid. I was lifting with my brother, and I just got back from Alaska. I was jacked, dude, because that's all you do is just work, huck fish around, hucking that around. You know what I mean? So I was pretty jacked, and we were doing bench, and I had a problem up in Alaska where I actually came back early because I had hurt my shoulder.
Okay.
And it would not stop. Like the pain wouldn't stop. I actually went to the hospital, got it infused and whatnot, and had a slight tear. But I came back, just ignored everything that had happened in Alaska, was doing 225. I did it 10 times, and I could have kept going, but I stopped. And my brother was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I was like, oh, dude, that's just really surprised I actually did that myself.
Yeah.
So then I put on 275 pounds and I went down and started press it up and I just, oh, dude, it was like
You drop everything.
Yeah. And he picked it up. He was like, oh my God, what happened to you, dude? And it was like, I can't even explain the surge of pain.
Yeah.
That
I
felt.
separated my collarbone from my shoulder snowboarding.
I almost puked, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It was so bad. I wanted to cry and I couldn't cry because I was like about ready to yak because it was such bad pain. I've never felt that before.
That sucks.
Yeah. So I left it there for like 60 days, something like that. And then decided to go get an MRI on it. And he's like, yeah, your shoulder's torn. And I remember taking pictures of my whole arm, dude. It was just bruised, red and just blue, just nasty, dude, all up in my pec right here. I was like, it's probably just slight tear.
Yeah, you're like, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to lead a better life at that time, dude. And I was dating this gal, and I had to stop working for about 6 weeks, and I went and got surgery. And I remember going into surgery, and the doctor's like, "Look, man, I want to give you this shot, and it's gonna hurt, but it's gonna help you right after surgery." And I remember being like, "You're just trying to make money off me, you fucker. I don't want
Yeah,
that
right.
shot. You know,
It's like an $8,000 shot.
Yeah, but he said it was like $400 or $500 or something like that. I was like, I'm not fucking doing that, And he's like, dude, you don't even have to pay for it. He's like, you're on like Medicaid and stuff. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I was like, took the shot, and it wasn't Medicaid. I had insurance through like, the car dealership that I was working at or whatever. But I didn't take the shot, and I remember waking up and it was the worst pain, dude. I remember like calling, asking my mom to like get the doctor back in. It was so uncomfortable. I could not do anything else besides focus on that pain. And then he ended up giving me the shot, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what it feels to like be fucked up again.
How long had it been at that point?
Since.
So, because you said you kind of cleaned your life. Had you been using still up until that point?
Dude, I was going more sparse.
Okay.
So I think the longest time period that I had gotten off of pills was 3 months, 4 months total.
Yeah.
Like that was the longest period that I could handle. I would always kind of dibble dabble back into it, get pills here and there. So at that time I was trying to live on the up and up. I was trying to work out. I was trying to be clean, tore my shoulder, then got a prescription and just fucking went right back into it. And not only that, dude, I remember having my mom come over, and I was just like, because you can't use your arm at all, dude. I was one-handed. And at the time, Silas's mom and I just had the worst of the worst with our relationship, and we're like not co-parenting well. So, we're still doing 50-50, and it's always been like that from the start. But dude, trying to take care of like a little, 4-year-old
with one arm.
Yeah. And then not only that, dude, I remember we got to a point where I didn't save up any money, because you don't anticipate just like tearing your shoulder.
Yeah.
And then I kind of kept still working, selling cars and whatnot, and then going to, and I didn't have any savings. I was just a fucking idiot, never good with money. I went about 6 weeks without work, and then my next paycheck was 2.5 months total. And so I was so broke. I remember feeling like this is a rock bottom for me.
Yeah.
Is that Silas came with me, and dude, all I had in the house to feed him was canned peaches.
Jeez.
So I'm sitting there with like one arm trying to open this fucking can with a can opener, manual can opener, and drain the juice out. And I'm chopping pieces out and feeding like my 4-year-old son. And he's like, didn't care. He's like, canned peaches, fuck yeah, Dad. I don't even think he was just like, oh, we're eating canned peaches again kind of thing. But just the
it's a good thing they don't remember those times.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely been a lot that I'm like, oh, thank God you were young.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was some good things too. Like I dragged my bed out in the front room.
Yeah.
And then he ended up coming out and like sleeping on the bed with me and whatnot in the front room. So it was kind of like our little fort out there for a while.
That's cool.
But that was a rough time frame where I was like, damn, dude, I'm like doing Percocet again. And I'm feeding my kid canned peaches. I can't fucking save myself from myself.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like a little bit of a rock bottom for me. So I was able to make okay money working at the dealership. I was working at Pete Kia.
Okay.
Off 34.
Yep.
And then ended up getting, I wanted to get out of the car business for a long time. Got let go from there. And it was because I was going to be like 5 minutes late for work one day. And the finance director at the time, I called in to say, hey, I'm like 5 minutes behind. And dude, she was just a firecracker, bro. She
lit into you.
Don't even fucking come in there. I'm like, stay the fuck home, Zeke. We don't fucking need people like you. Dude. And at that time, too, I was just like also a little firecracker.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, you're like, and here we go.
So I was just, I laid back into her, and then I just like didn't even show up. I'm like, send me my check, got on unemployment, ended up working out a job where I got hired on at Madwire, dude, but didn't really stop what I was doing. And then at Pete Kia, I had met this guy that was really into doing coke. And that's when shit started going weird, sideways, because now I'm in my mid-20s. And I feel like I was pretty good at balancing between being a piece of shit and being a dad. Yeah. I never missed dropping Cy off at like daycare. Never missed dropping off him at school, stuff like that. So when I say I'm like in that 6, 7 out of 10 range, I flirted up
functioning.
There. Yeah. But at the same time, it was never like I could never take him on a vacation. Yeah. You know what I mean? I could never do things and
just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah. Just getting by. And a lot of the times, dude, it was just like I wasn't the best dad in the way that like I would get him, and then we do like a 2-2-3 schedule. So Monday, Tuesday, he'd be with me. Wednesday, Thursday, he'd be with his mom. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he'd be with me. And then he'd be with his mom Monday, Tuesday. And then,
switch back. Yeah.
Yeah. Switch back. And then sometimes I'd go drop him off with my mom and then just go like party for Friday or Saturday or whatever, and she liked it because she's like a grandma. And like,
got to spend time with him.
Yeah. So there was that dynamic. But this kid that I met, he introduced me into smoking coke.
Oh, how to do shit, that.
Yeah. And I just so happened to have a buddy at the time that sold coke and was like wealthy off of it. Not wealthy, but made good money. Yeah, he always had fucking nice cars. He always had like a nice girl around him, which was really random. You know what I mean? And he was living that lifestyle. He was kind of a POS too. Yeah. He had a girlfriend at home all the time, and he was always with another girl. You know what I mean? And so I got him to end up fronting me, and then just went down a rabbit hole for probably the next year and a half.
Jeez, man.
Yeah. Of doing that, and got so bad to the point, dude, like there was one point where we had been up like all night. We had the day off before, and I think it was on a Sunday. We had been up all day Sunday, all night into Monday. And I remember I was going to try to call in on Monday, and I tried to call into like the call-in line or whatever. And I was so fucked up. I couldn't even talk. Like I just was like, this is Zeke. And I just couldn't talk. I couldn't say what I couldn't get it out, So I ended up just hanging up and then like sobered up. And this is 15 minutes before I have to be into work. So like my fucking heart's racing. I'm jacked up. I call back in, and then the person that is the admin picked up. It just so happened to be the owner's wife too.
Oh, man.
So she picks up, and I'm like, hey, what's up? It's Zeke. I'm supposed to be into work today, and like I can't come in. She's like, oh, okay. I'll mark you down as absent. You have like one left or something like that. And I had already been absent before. And she's like, so why are you absent? And dude, I was just stunned, dude. Like I couldn't answer the question and ended up just hanging up the phone. I was like, fuck, hang up. Yeah. So, and then I was freaking out all day. That like scared me sober. So and then I ended up passing out like sometime around 5 p.m. Woke up early the next day, and I'm just like freaking out trying to go into work. And then I just ended up bombing that job because I was doing that, just fucked up. And everybody at work was like making fun of me for being an idiot, not remembering stuff. And I had some highs there and some lows, but ended up, I think a year in, I thought I was getting laid off because the company was doing bad.
Yeah.
He pulled me into the office and I think 2 other guys. And he's like, look, man, since you've been here, you have not produced. And we have just got to cut the draining. He's like,
did he know what was going on?
He didn't know.
Yeah.
No, but at the time too, I was just lying about everything all the time. I couldn't even remember what I told people a lot of the time. So I probably had some type of excuse for him about why I couldn't show up or why this happened or why that happened. I was always trying to finagle and manipulate my way out of a situation. And so the hammer just kind of came down.
Isn't that great about being sober? You never have to remember what you say.
Yeah.
You just tell the truth all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's actually easier to remember what you say.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I know that I told the truth in that situation. So
yeah.
Is your memory coming back? Like now
dude,
that
big time.
you're, how far are you now? Like for real sober date?
Real sober, it's like almost 8 months. July 10th was the last day.
Yeah.
That's on my app. But yeah, dude, that's one thing that's crazy about sobriety and alcoholism. Like I didn't realize, but it takes 5 years. It could take up to 5 years for your brain to really start gaining all its function back.
Yeah. That's right. 231.
Yeah. 7 months, 16 days.
Nice.
Thanks, bro.
See, I still feel like I have like a blemished memory. It's hard for me to remember. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think my wife's
and that's
advantage of me, but
I remember
that's
that
alcohol.
at Tradesman.
Alcohol
I
is
was like,
the
how the
one.
fuck do you not remember that, dude?
yeah.
I think because basically,
Well, dude, even up to the tradesman times, I was still fucked up.
because
Really?
basically you guys are
Oh,
doing
yeah.
heroin at that time and then smoking crack. Like that's, isn't that what cocaine is? Like
Oh yeah.
it's just like when you smoke it, it's basically crack cocaine.
Well, and the pills never left me, man. So at this
that's-
time, where I'm producing,
so you're
and
doing
getting,
both.
I'm able to make money. You know what I mean? So $4 or $5 grand a month. When I was having big months at the dealership, whatever job I was at, sometimes I make like $6, $7 grand a month.
Yeah.
And even into the tradesman days, making $5, $6K a month back in like 2013, 2014, it's fucking good money.
Yeah, it is good money.
So at the time, as long as I'm hustling, I'm doing well. And the time between when I'm doing pills, it's not every day because you can't be a productive salesperson like that. But it's, somebody gets their prescription and then we go ham for a week in the month.
Yeah.
So you never really like leave it and you have the money to just, it's like, okay, well, how many does he have? I'll buy all of them, whatever, $30 a piece. Let's go.
That's crazy.
Would you do this all by yourself too? Or was it when the friends came around?
I would do it by myself and when friends came around.
Yeah.
So dude, like I'd roll over sometimes from waking up and just blow a 30 going to work, when that time came around, because I had enough discipline in these moments when I'm starting to be 25, 26, 27, 28 years old to where the physicality of what pills were doing to me was too much for me to do it every single day forever. You would just get, for one, you get fucking major constipation, right? So that, and then your stomach starts to hurt really bad. You start to feel like shit. You start to feel like you need to puke. So then naturally, when you do more pills, you get that feeling of like, if you have too much, you kind of feel like you need to puke, So that all mixed together, you just start to feel like shit. So even though you're high, you're like, oh, I just feel like shit, good, So going in on like day 6 or day 7 of a bender, you're feeling like that much shit. And I would like need a reset. So I'd have to just be like, dude, I need to stop. Mm-hmm. And then 2 days later, after you stop, you take a shit. And then you realize like, fuck, dude, I barely ate anything for like the past 3 days. So you lose all this weight. So you're just like fluctuating, you know what I mean? Like you're not sleeping well. There's a lot of times where you go on these benders and, you might sleep well the first night, but then the second night you might get like 1 hour of sleep. Third night, you might get 1 hour of sleep. And then all of a sudden you can't sleep at all. You're up all night. You're like fucking itching. You're just, and then when it's time to go to work, then you're extremely tired. So you go into work and people are like, dude,
what's going on?
You tired? It's like, yeah, dude, it's been fucking really busy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're really, really hazy, So a lot of times if I'm really, really hazy too, it's like you can't remember shit. You can't recall. You're not on the top of your feet, you know? So, so I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, let me ask you real quick. It sparked a question. So if your discipline is not being able to take a shit, anything to do with Silas, like, because what I'm getting at, dude, is I'm trying to figure out where your discipline came from, and it sounds like it was just you just figured it out on your own.
See, and
Dad wasn't around enough.
Exactly. That's exactly right, dude. Like, you learned that as a young kid. You know, I obviously my dad was around, but dude, look at your life, right? Like, when are those transitions, right? When do those transitions happen? And when, like, it's when you finally look at something in your life and you're like, dude, this is so fucked up that I have to go this other direction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like,
there's a couple things. There's a couple transitioning periods, man. And Psy was always one. And like to this day, you know, like I just have there's this guilt about me. Like, dang, I could have been so much better than I was. Right. You know what I mean? And I should have been so much better.
What were your motivations for, you know, kind of getting away from all of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Silas was definitely one of them, man. Yeah. Silas was a huge one. And then shit that just happened to me, you know, always looking at Cy and being like, I could do this better. Why can't we go on this vacation? Or why can't we do this with him? You know? And when I started being like a GM at Tradesman and making more money, there was a lot more leniency. I was able to finally get him, you know? So a lot of like the skill and the sales tactic that I learned from like dealing cars, you know what I mean? And kind of getting brought up through that industry shielded me from a lot of the repercussions of what just an addict would be if you worked at like 7-Eleven.
Right. Yeah.
Because you have a little bit extra money.
Dude, that's a good point too, because, and that's, I talked about how I kind of felt like we had that like air over this area of like addiction and things like that. But dude, the thing that's crazy to me is most people that I know were high functioning, you know, had that mindset of like, okay, I'm going to make sure that this side of my life is okay, but I'm also still going to get super fucked up. And then it's like gets to the point where you just can't separate them anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that increases your odds if you have to work and have to do something because you have something to work for.
Right. Exactly.
So if you didn't have Silas, where would you be right now?
The fucking rabbit hole.
Dude, it's like, I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah.
But
in a lot of ways, you know, he was a savior and whatnot. And in that sense, you know, now it's transitioned to my wife now is like the reason where I'm at now, you know,
100%.
A big transition eye opener for me, was I want to say 2017, I started growing some weed, selling it.
I remember that. And that light broke. I remember that day, dude.
Yeah.
Remember that?
No.
A couple less pills, you probably remembered it.
But which one are you?
I don't know. I just came into Tradesman one day and you were like all bummed out because you had your grow house and then one of the lights above broke and you lost a bunch of plants and you're all kicking rocks about it.
Dude, those days were fucked up. But so I had one of my buddies come in. I won't say his name, but you know him. I had one of my buddies come in and help us, you know, grow and whatnot. And so there were some mistakes and whatnot. And I was like still kind of getting fucked up. But I wanted to grow weed to make more money. And by this time, Supernatural Leads had been open.
Okay.
So I started.
Well, and I was going to say in 2017, weed was legal, right?
Yeah.
Were you trying to do it the legal route?
No.
Okay.
No. I think you can grow like 6 plants.
Yeah, you can go 6 per person.
We were not
way over that
threshold.
Just it's legal, but you can only grow a certain amount.
Yeah, per person.
Yeah, per license.
So
like, are you just trying to sell it like to the dispensaries, or
no?
He was doing it fully illegally. So
Aaron has such a beautiful mind, and like, so innocent. Like, oh, did you want to like do business with somebody? Come on, man.
That's kind of what I thought too.
We've always had that entrepreneurial mindset. That's what I'm saying. Like weed had just gotten legal, so it's like, oh, boom, let's go, let's get it to the dispensary.
Yeah, but that's
6 plants. Go fuck yourself. I'll get 12.
That's a fucked up process, dude. Like,
I wanted the black market.
Yeah.
Okay. And
straight cash money.
You know, I had through my girlfriend at the time, who ended up being just horrible. Through my girlfriend at the time, introduced me to dude from Denver, and he had a buddy that he introduced me to. Turns out he wasn't the buddy, right? It was just some stick up motherfucker. But he's like, hey, I'll buy X amount of pounds. And I think we were going down to sell 5 pounds. It was me. And I had a couple buddies behind me. And what was weird about the communication, and I always thought it was weird and didn't realize that I was just an idiot. It's because I was fucked up, still, and just making bad decisions. And so I'm driving down to Denver, and my buddies are behind me or whatnot. And we're kind of like texting back and forth. And he's like, make sure, you don't do this. Make sure you wait for us to get up on scene with you. You know what I mean? Because the plan was, because we didn't know him, is I go up and they'd be sitting in a car, just like, a little bit of ways away out of the view of him, just in case something went down. Right. So I tried calling the guy on the way down there. He didn't answer. Then he texted me and he's like, hey, yeah, we're all good, man. I'm just sitting here waiting for you. What's up? And I was like, hey, just want to let you know I'm on the way, blah, blah, blah. And the reason we went down to sell it to him is because we could literally get, I think it was like $300 or $400 per pound better pricing from him. He said he was coming from out of state to buy. So we go and somehow I lost them. And they were maybe like a couple miles behind me. And I was trying to wait for them. And I'm texting him like, dude, where the fuck are you guys at? Like, this guy's texting me like, let's go. He's like wondering if we're still going to do the deal, and it wasn't that long. It was maybe like 10 or 15 minutes behind. And I'm trying to get them to come with me so that I can go just do this deal. And he's like, hey man, this is where I'm at. I tried calling him. He answered but I couldn't hear him. I was like, what the fuck? There's something wrong with your phone. Can you hear me? And just blank silence, but it was like a burner phone. Right. So I called him back a couple times. He answered both times, just to try to make it seem like legit. And then he texted me. He's like, I can't hear you. And I'm like, I can't hear you. So I was just confused at the time, not thinking like, oh my God, dude, this is like a recipe for disaster. What the fuck are you doing? Get out of here. So I texted him. I'm like, hey, I'm pulling up here. And I just decided to go without my 2 buddies because I had enough communication with him and whatnot to be able to go to try to meet him. So I pull into this like shady ass apartment complex, dude, sketchy as fuck. And this dude walks out with a hood on, and he's in my headlights, and he's like, yeah, just pull in right here, and he came up to the passenger side window, and I rolled down my window. I put the truck in park, and I'm like, hey man, where are we going? And he started asking me questions, and I thought it was instantly. I thought it was weird. I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, is it just you, man? And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Is it just me? And that's how I was talking with him. So I'm like, dude, what's your problem? Yeah. And he goes, hey. And I looked over to my left side, like thinking that somebody was like coming up on my driver's side window. And then I looked back over and he had a gun pointed at me. And he's like, dude, turn the car off. And I was like, you fucking piece of shit.
It stuck you up. They were standing you guys up.
Yeah. And my buddy still hadn't texted me, the guys that were behind me, that they were like even close. So I got this guy pointing this gun at me, and he's like, just put the keys down slow, man. I don't want to have to shoot you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, where's your weed at? And I was like, it's in the back. And I'm like, are you sure you want to do business this way? And he's like, I'm going to do business this way. And so I didn't unlock the car or anything. And he's like, where's it at? And I just rolled down my back window, and he reached in, grabbed one bag, and he's like, hey, I got it. And so I thought that there was like a bunch of dudes around. You know what I mean? He kept acting like there was other people around to try to like confuse me, I think. So he grabbed the weed, and then he just ran off, dude. And I was like, oh, you motherfucker. So I turned my truck back on. I put it in reverse. At the same time I'm pulling out of reverse, I see in the headlights there's 2 cars that crossed the street on the other side of the apartment. And he had ran to a position where there was no street out that way. So I had to go around the apartment complex. By that time, he had ran into the fucking high school or whatever. Didn't have anything with him. and there was a car that drove past me, and there was another car that drove away from me. And I was like, motherfucker. So I'm hitting my buddies up. I'm like, hey, where are you guys at? Like, what are you doing? This dude just pointed a fucking gun at me and took like a pound of our weed or 2 pounds of our weed or whatever. And they're like, dude, we're just pulling up. So he's like, we just saw a car leaving. And I'm like, it could be that car. And by that time, the car was gone, you know? So they had planned this out very, very meticulously to rob us. They were supposed to get all 10 of those pounds. They only ended up getting 2 pounds. And at that moment, I was like, dude,
wake up call.
This motherfucker could have fucking shot me over 10 pounds of weed. And here I am, like in my sober mind, I never would have thought to grow weed and make money off of it at this point in time. And I never would have thought to like meet up with somebody that I couldn't talk with, speak with, and I didn't trust wholly and fully.
Gosh, dude, that's a crazy story.
Yeah. So that was a big wake up call for me. It's like, damn, I got to tone it back, you know? So I still didn't like fully stop. I just kind of toned it back.
Yeah. Dude, what we're going to do you want to come in and do another episode? I honestly, like, your past is so crazy, man. Like, dude, I want to talk to you a lot about where you're at today, because I just love what you've created, how you've changed your life. And dude, I had no idea like the amount of stuff that you got yourself into. Mm-hmm. So I really want to spend time with you, like on the political side, on your business side, on the side of life that you're at now. And I think that you have a lot to offer our listeners, just because, I don't know, dude, in my mind, like, you're just one of those people too that's like, I'm going to go do this, like 100% into whatever you're doing at any time, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
You know, and I love that, you know, and I want to highlight that a little bit more, but we're kind of running out of time today. So would you be willing to come back in and do another one? Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right.
Won't be wearing the same stuff.
That's fine. I don't care. And I know, like I said, I just know that you have a lot to talk about on the other side of life.
Yeah. The politics side is really good. And it's very important in today's culture, especially Absolutely. More than anything, man. And then the business side is like a whole nother world. You know, that's how like Aaron and I connect so well.
Yeah.
Is through that business side. So
well, go ahead.
I just got two things for you really quick. My favorite argument that you and Cody had, among many. So real quick, the set in the scene is like when we were at Tradesman, we always had meetings at 2:00 every day. And I didn't really care too much about the meeting. I just wanted to see him and Cody go at it. And so he brought up the commercial fishing, and Zeke was like, I have caught more fish than you have.
Oh, dude.
Cody's like, fuck you, no, you
I
haven't.
can see that. Yeah, that's going downhill real quick.
Oh, so good.
I love, though, like, we were hanging out with Drew the other day, and I just love, like, your personality is like, let's just stir the pot.
Oh, yeah. That's so good.
You know? And it's just like, let's see what happens here. So, no, dude, I really appreciate you taking time to do this. Yeah, I think you have a lot of wisdom, and obviously you've been through a lot of life, lived a lot of life. Is there anything else you want to say on this episode? Because what we'll probably do like a small intro or something, but this is going to be episode 1 of Zeke's story. We're going to do this as a 2-part thing because, like I said, he's just an awesome dude. Has a lot to offer. So is there anything else you want to add to this one?
Shoot, man. I would just tell people that it's just one part of your story. You know what I mean? All the addiction is just a section of your life, and it's better that you get out of it earlier, right? But what we talk about next is like the flowering. You know, we planted the seed,
yes, and
now we're going to talk about the flowers.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the part too. Like for our podcast, like we realize this is a compilation of stories, you know, and it's, you know, the intention behind that is to lead by vulnerability, you know, and to let our listeners know, like, hey, you know, our lives are fucked up too. Like, we've had a lot of issues, we've had to make a lot of hard decisions, but it works, you know, and that's what we want to highlight here. You know, in phase 2 for me, and I'm working on this right now, is how do we live a sober life? Mm-hmm. You know, what does that look like? And I think episode 2 for you is going to be a lot of that. And it's for me too, like I'm doing a journal right now, and, you know, maybe we'll be putting that out for our listeners, and just keeping it right in the forefront of your mind all the time, you know, and just remembering like that is not the side of life that I want to live on.
Yeah. Well, and understanding too, man, and you're in this now. This is like the stage that you're in, is that when you get out of addiction, the hardest part about staying out of addiction is that you have the pull to go back to it because life just doesn't get instantly better forever, right? Like you have the financial struggle, and you really have to face your demons, and you really have to confront the problems that you've had with the relationships that you had, or maybe if you're married or with your kids, and all of that is going to come out.
Right.
And that is a very, very important part about the post addiction phase. And a lot of people run away from it and run right back to what they're doing.
Yeah. And that's the scary part of all of it, right? Is laying all that stuff down. And I think it might've been Dustin that had a great analogy, but I always look at it as like, dude, your life is this pane of glass and you've got to sit down and shatter it, you know, and just be like, okay, I don't want this piece. I don't want this piece. I like this piece, you know, and you've got to dissect yourself. And like you said, face those demons, you know, but it's so much easier to do it when you have a clear head.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where starting with this journal is like, okay, you're sober, hit this 40-day journal, right? Like start discovering inside of you, like, what are the things that led you to that point? You know, what are the things that happened to you in your life that you need to address? What kind of things have you programmed into your self-conscious? Your subconscious of like belief system, things like that. Like all of that stuff has to be broken down.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I'm excited. I love hearing the backstory, but dude, I love kind of like the second side of the story. Like it's my favorite part, you know, the redemptive side. Yeah. So I'm excited to do that. But
before we let you go, I'm hungry. Who do I call if I'm hungry?
Supernatural Leads.
I swear to God, dude, you just need to start like doing jingles.
I know.
It's so funny. Like
we got to highlight.
I love it. You're so good at that. And I'm terrible about it, but it's hilarious.
Literally, I intermittent fast and I can eat in 9 minutes. So I see your tattoo and I want some healthy food.
Yeah. Get it,
So
man.
anyway, plug your business real quick, man, before
Appreciate
we go.
that. Supernatural Eats, based in Fort Collins, and we do meal preparation, catering, government food service. Meal preparation is delivered here like locally, you know, Fort Collins, Loveland, Greeley, Johnstown, Windsor, Northern Colorado. We even go into the Denver area. Okay. So it's just prepared meals that are vacuum sealed. We're actually the only company in Colorado that has a variance for reduced oxygen packaging in under a retail food establishment license. The only company. So
that's crazy.
Think of a restaurant that's like packaging food in a reduced oxygen environment. And then we do our catering, like corporate catering and stuff. We have a school that we cater for. We're going to start catering for a daycare, I think. And then we do like the wedding and corporate functions. And then the biggest portion of our business is government food service, full food service. We're up at in North Dakota, we're in Wyoming, and then we are in El Salvador in the U.S. Embassy. So
that's awesome.
We've gotten contracts, I guess, abroad now.
Good for you,
and that's
man.
a majority of our work that we do. That's kind of in the background, though.
Yeah.
So
good for you, dude. That's amazing. Well, Zeke, I just want to say thank you for your time today. We'll get you back on here soon. To our listener, thank you guys so much for your support. We really appreciate it. This thing is actually taking off in a pretty cool way, you know, and the biggest way that you guys can support us right now is just watch our videos, like, share, subscribe, let people know about it, reach out to us. If you have questions, we'd love to answer questions from our perspective that you guys have going on in your life. You know, that really helps us put out relevant content. So anyways, we're here for you guys. So let us know what you guys want to hear. You can find us on Instagram at Shattered Darkness NoCo. Thank you. And then
I'm not gonna stare you down this time.
Spotify's just
right,
Shattered Darkness. I'm going to try. Spotify's just Shattered Darkness, and YouTube is Shattered Darkness Podcast. So we really appreciate you guys, and we'll be back soon.
God bless everybody.
God bless.